The first light of dawn crept through the tall windows of the Moretti mansion like an unwelcome intruder, casting long shadows across the marble floors that Elena had been scrubbing for the past hour. Her knees ached against the cold stone, and her hands, red and raw from the harsh cleaning solutions, moved in mechanical circles, polishing away every trace of the previous night's gathering. October had arrived in upstate New York with its characteristic cruelty, bringing with it a biting cold that seeped through the mansion's grandeur and settled deep into Elena's bones. Outside, fog rolled across the vast estate grounds like a gray ocean, obscuring the iron gates and the armed guards who patrolled the perimeter. Inside, the heating system hummed softly, but its warmth never quite reached the corners where Elena worked. She was 22 years old, though the past 3 years had aged her in ways that didn't show on her face. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and her gray uniform, plain, shapeless, deliberately unremarkable, hung loosely on her thin frame. She had learned to make herself small, invisible, a shadow that moved through the mansion without drawing attention. It was safer that way. The grandfather clock in the entrance hall chimed 5:30. Elena gathered her cleaning supplies with practiced efficiency, moving silently across the floor she'd just polished. The mansion was beginning to wake up. Soon the kitchen would fill with the morning staff preparing breakfast. Soon, Maria would emerge from her quarters to inspect Elena's work with her sharp, critical eye. And soon, though Elena tried not to think about it, he would descend the grand staircase, expecting his coffee at precisely 7 o'clock. Dante Moretti, the man who owned everything in this house, including, in a very real sense, Elena herself. She made her way down the servants' corridor, a narrow passage hidden behind the mansion's elegant facade. The contrast was jarring. Out front, everything was marble and mahogany, crystal chandeliers and Persian rugs. Back here, the walls were plain white, the floors simple concrete, the lighting harsh and fluorescent. It was a reminder of the hierarchy, of where people like Elena belonged. The kitchen was already busy when she arrived. Maria stood at the center island, directing 2 other housekeepers with the precision of a general commanding troops. She was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a face that rarely smiled. She had been with the Moretti family for 30 years and wore that loyalty like armor. "You're late," Maria said, without looking up from the espresso machine she was preparing. "I'm sorry. The entrance hall took longer than expected. Mr. Moretti had guests last night. Important guests. The house needs to be perfect." Maria's eyes finally lifted, scanning Elena with the same critical assessment she gave everything. "You look tired." "I'm fine. Fine doesn't matter here. Presentable matters. When you bring Mr. Moretti his coffee, make sure your uniform is straight. Keep your eyes down. Don't speak unless spoken to." Maria paused, her voice dropping slightly. "And don't linger." Elena nodded. These weren't new instructions. Maria had drilled them into her from the first day, but the older woman repeated them like a protective incantation, as if the rules themselves could keep Elena safe. The other housekeepers, Rosa and Catherine, worked silently at their stations preparing breakfast trays. They had been kind to Elena at first, in those early weeks when she'd arrived at the mansion with nothing but a single suitcase and a debt that felt like a noose around her neck. But kindness had its limits in a place like this. They had their own survival to worry about. Elena prepared the coffee tray with meticulous care. A single espresso in a porcelain cup, no sugar, no cream, a small plate with 2 biscotti, a folded copy of the Financial Times, everything arranged precisely as Dante Moretti expected it. At 6:45, she carried the tray through the mansion's main corridors, her footsteps silent on the thick carpets. The house was a maze of rooms, each more opulent than the last. Oil paintings in gilded frames lined the walls, some of them, Elena suspected, worth more than she'd earned in a lifetime. Antique furniture, sculptures, vases that probably belonged in museums. The Moretti family had built their empire over 3 generations, and every inch of this mansion proclaimed their power. She reached the closed door of Dante's private office and knocked twice. Softly. "Enter." His voice was deep, controlled, the kind of voice that expected obedience without question. Elena pushed open the door and stepped inside, keeping her eyes lowered as Maria had taught her. The office was masculine and austere. Dark wood paneling, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with legal texts and business journals. Behind the massive desk, Dante Moretti sat reviewing documents, his attention focused entirely on the papers in front of him. She had seen him countless times over the past 18 months, but Elena had never quite gotten used to his presence. At 34, Dante possessed the kind of authority that filled a room. He was tall, broad-shouldered, always impeccably dressed in tailored suits that probably cost more than Elena's entire debt. His dark hair was styled with casual precision, and his face, handsome in a hard, angular way, rarely showed emotion. But it was his eyes that unsettled her most. Dark, calculating, they missed nothing. Eyes that had seen violence, had ordered it, had committed it. Eyes that looked through people rather than at them. Elena approached the desk and set down the tray with steady hands, despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "Your coffee, sir," she said quietly. Dante didn't look up. He reached for the espresso cup with one hand while signing a document with the other. To him, she was furniture, a function, not a person. The entrance hall, he said, his tone flat. There were water spots on the marble near the door. Elena's stomach tightened. I apologize, sir. I'll re-clean it immediately. See that you do. She turned to leave, grateful to escape his presence. Wait. Elena froze, her hand on the door handle. What's your name? The question caught her completely off guard. She'd been working in this mansion for 18 months, had brought him coffee nearly every morning, and he'd never asked her name. She turned back, keeping her eyes lowered. Elena, sir. Elena Russo. Dante finally looked up, his gaze settling on her for the first time. It lasted only a moment, a brief, assessing glance, but Elena felt exposed, as if he could see through all her carefully constructed defenses. Elena, he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. Then his attention returned to his documents. That's all. She left the office quickly, her heart pounding in a way she didn't fully understand. In the hallway, she pressed her back against the wall and took a deep breath. It was nothing, she told herself. A random question, meaningless. So why did it feel like something had shifted? The rest of the morning passed in its usual rhythm. Elena re-cleaned the entrance hall, polished silver in the dining room, changed linens in the guest bedrooms. The mansion had 23 rooms, and most days it felt like she cleaned every single one. Around noon, she took her lunch break in the servants' quarters, a small dining area adjacent to the kitchen. Rosa and Catherine were already there, eating quickly before their afternoon duties. You were in the office this morning, Rosa said as Elena sat down with her meager lunch of bread and cheese. How did it go? Fine. The usual. Catherine leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Did you see Vincent? I heard he was there last night with Mr. Moretti. Some kind of business meeting. Elena shook her head. Vincent Caruso was Dante's right-hand man, a tall, cold-eyed enforcer who managed the family's security and handled what Maria delicately referred to as difficult situations. Elena avoided him whenever possible. Best not to ask questions about what goes on in those meetings, Rosa said, her tone cautionary. What we don't know can't hurt us. But that was the problem with living in the Moretti mansion. Everything hurt, even the things you didn't know. The fear was constant, ambient, like the fog outside the windows. Elena had learned to navigate it, to keep her head down and her thoughts to herself. But some nights she lay awake in her attic room and wondered how long she could survive in this world. 3 years ago, Elena's life had been completely different. She'd been in college, studying literature, living in a small apartment in Brooklyn with her best friend. Her parents, Antonio and Isabella Russo, had owned a bakery in Queens, and while money had been tight, there had been love and laughter and a future that felt full of possibility. Then came the accident. A rainy night, slick roads, a car that crashed into a highway barrier. Both of her parents died on impact. Elena had been left with not only grief, but crushing debt. Medical bills from her mother's previous illness, funeral costs, and loans her parents had taken out to keep the bakery running. $80,000. It might as well have been $8 million. The debt collectors had started calling immediately, gentle at first, then increasingly aggressive. Then they weren't debt collectors anymore. They were men in expensive suits who appeared at her apartment door, who spoke in quiet, menacing tones about what happened to people who didn't pay what they owed. Elena had tried everything. She'd dropped out of college, taken 3 jobs, sold everything her parents owned, but it was never enough. The interest kept compounding. The threats kept escalating, and she'd been drowning, sinking deeper every day, until the offer came. Work in the Moretti household, live-in position, room and board provided. All of her earnings would go directly toward her debt. When the debt was paid, she would be free to leave. Elena had known what the Moretti family was. Everyone in New York knew. But when the alternative was ending up at the bottom of the East River, she'd signed the contract with shaking hands. That had been 18 months ago. According to her calculations, and she tracked every penny obsessively, she had paid off $43,000. Only $37,000 left. $37,000 between her and freedom. That evening, after her official duties ended at 8 o'clock, Elena retreated to her room in the mansion's attic. It was small and sparse. A single bed, a dresser, a tiny bathroom, but it was hers, the only private space she had in this entire vast house. She locked the door, changed out of her uniform, and sat on her bed with the battered notebook she kept hidden under her mattress. Inside, she had documented everything, every payment, every deduction, a countdown to the day when her debt would be erased. But tonight she found it hard to focus on the numbers. Her mind kept returning to that moment in Dante's office, to the way he'd looked at her and asked her name. What's your name? It shouldn't matter. It didn't matter. But for just a moment, she hadn't been invisible. Elena closed the notebook and pulled out her phone, an old model with a cracked screen that barely held a charge. She opened the Photos app and scrolled to the pictures of her parents, her father's warm smile, her mother's gentle eyes. She missed them with an ache that never quite faded. I'm trying, Papa, she whispered to the photo. I'm almost there, just a little longer. A tear slid down her cheek, and she allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to cry. That was her rule. 5 minutes to feel everything. The grief, the loneliness, the exhaustion, the fear. Then she would wipe her tears, wash her face, and prepare for tomorrow. Because survival didn't allow for more than 5 minutes of weakness. She was drying her eyes when she heard voices in the hallway outside her room. Male voices, angry and urgent. Elena froze, her heart rate spiking. Staff weren't supposed to be up here at night. This floor was meant to be empty except for her. She crept to her door and pressed her ear against the wood. Don't care what you think, Vincent. The old man's will has to be opened. It's been 6 months. That was Dante's voice, tight with frustration. The timing is terrible. Vincent's tone was measured. Careful. Marco is already pushing for more control. If there are surprises in that will, then we deal with them. Get Castellano on the phone tomorrow. We're reading the full document. All the sealed sections. I want to know what my father was hiding. Their footsteps moved past Elena's door down the stairs, and she released the breath she'd been holding. The will. Dante's father, Giovanni Moretti, had died 8 months ago. A massive heart attack that had shaken the entire organization. Elena remembered the funeral, remembered standing in the back of the church with the other staff while hundreds of people paid their respects to a man who had built an empire. She hadn't thought much about Giovanni's will. Why would she? It had nothing to do with her. Elena returned to her bed, but sleep didn't come easily. Outside her small window, the October wind rattled the glass, and somewhere in the distance, she heard the sound of cars moving through the estate gates. She didn't know it then, but everything was about to change. In less than 12 hours, Elena would learn that Giovanni Moretti's will contained her name, and nothing would ever be invisible again. The morning arrived with an unusual tension that seemed to permeate every corner of the Moretti mansion. Elena sensed it the moment she entered the kitchen at 5:30. Maria was barking orders more sharply than usual. Rosa kept dropping utensils, and even Catherine, normally calm and collected, seemed jumpy and distracted. "What's going on?" Elena asked quietly as she began preparing Dante's coffee tray. Maria shot her a warning look. "Not our concern. Just do your work and stay out of the way today. Mr. Moretti has important business." But Elena had learned to read the signs. Important business in the Moretti household usually meant lawyers, accountants, or people from other families. It meant closed doors, hushed conversations, and an atmosphere thick with unspoken threats. She finished preparing the coffee, the same precise ritual as every morning, and made her way through the mansion's corridors. The October sun was just beginning to rise, casting golden light through the tall windows and illuminating the dust particles that danced in the air. It should have been beautiful, but Elena found no comfort in it today. As she approached Dante's office, she noticed something different. Vincent stood outside the door, his massive frame blocking the entrance. He was on his phone, speaking in low, clipped tones. When he saw Elena approaching, he ended the call abruptly. "Wait here," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. Elena stopped several feet away, holding the tray carefully. Vincent knocked twice on the office door, then leaned inside to speak with Dante. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw Vincent gesture toward her, saw Dante nod curtly. "You can go in," Vincent said, stepping aside, "but make it quick. Mr. Moretti has a meeting in 10 minutes. Elena entered the office, immediately sensing the change in atmosphere. Dante sat behind his desk, but his usual controlled demeanor seemed fractured. Documents were spread across the surface in organized chaos, and his tie was loosened, a small detail, but on a man as precise as Dante Moretti, it spoke volumes. He looked up as she set down the tray, and for the second time in 2 days, his eyes actually focused on her. "Elena," he said, and there was something in his voice she couldn't identify. Curiosity? Suspicion? "How long have you worked here?" 18 months, sir. "And before that? Where did you live?" The questions unsettled her. This wasn't the usual transactional exchange. "Brooklyn, sir. I was in college." "Your parents?" Elena's throat tightened. "They passed away 3 years ago. A car accident." Dante studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face as if looking for something specific. Then he nodded slowly. "Leave the tray. You can go." She left quickly, her mind racing with questions she didn't dare ask. In the hallway, Vincent was still standing guard, now joined by 2 other men in dark suits. Additional security, which was unusual for a morning meeting. Something significant was happening today. Elena could feel it in her bones. She spent the rest of the morning on edge, unable to shake the feeling of impending change. At 9 o'clock, a black Mercedes pulled up to the mansion's front entrance. Elena was polishing silverware in the dining room when she saw an older man in an expensive suit emerge from the car, carrying a leather briefcase. "That's Richard Castellano," Rosa whispered, appearing beside Elena at the window. "The family's lawyer. He only comes for serious matters." "What kind of serious matters?" Elena asked. Rosa shook her head. "The kind we don't ask about." They watched as Vincent met Castellano at the door and escorted him directly to Dante's office. The door closed behind them with an ominous finality. The morning dragged on with excruciating slowness. Elena went through her duties mechanically, making beds, dusting furniture, organizing the library, but her attention kept drifting back to that closed office door. Whatever was happening behind it felt significant, though she couldn't explain why she was so certain of it. Around 11 o'clock, Maria found her in the second-floor hallway. "Elena, go to your room and wait there until you're called," Maria said, her expression tight with worry. "Called? Why would I be called? Just do as I say." "And Elena," Maria hesitated, something almost like sympathy crossing her weathered features. "Whatever happens, remember that you're strong, stronger than you think." Before Elena could ask what that meant, Maria turned and hurried away, leaving Elena standing alone in the hallway with a growing sense of dread. She climbed the stairs to her attic room, her legs feeling heavier with each step. Inside, she sat on her bed and waited, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to stop them from shaking. Minutes stretched into an hour. The uncertainty was torture. Finally, footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, purposeful footsteps. Vincent appeared in her doorway, his expression unreadable. "The boss wants to see you. Now." "What's this about?" Elena asked, standing on unsteady legs. "You'll find out." The walk through the mansion felt surreal, like moving through a dream or a nightmare. Vincent stayed close behind her, his presence both protective and threatening. They passed Rosa in the hallway, and Elena saw fear flash across the other woman's face. When they reached Dante's office, Vincent opened the door and gestured for Elena to enter. Inside, Dante stood by the window overlooking the estate grounds, his back to her. Richard Castellano sat in one of the leather chairs, his briefcase open on his lap. The room smelled of expensive cologne and old paper. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Elena stood just inside, waiting, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Sit down, Elena," Dante said without turning around. She moved to the chair opposite Castellano, perching on the edge of the seat. The lawyer watched her with professional neutrality, giving nothing away. Dante finally turned to face her. He moved to his desk but didn't sit, instead leaning against it with his arms crossed. The posture was deceptively casual, but Elena could see the tension in his shoulders, the hard line of his jaw. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked. "No, sir. My father died 8 months ago." "You remember that?" Elena nodded. "Yes, sir. I'm very sorry for your loss." His will was read shortly after his death. Standard distributions, territory, assets, businesses divided among family members and key associates. Dante paused, his eyes never leaving her face. But there was a sealed section, instructions that it not be opened until 6 months after his death. Elena had no idea where this was going. Why would Giovanni Moretti's will have anything to do with her? "That sealed section was opened this morning," Dante continued. "Mr. Castellano, please read the relevant passage." The lawyer adjusted his reading glasses and lifted a document from his briefcase. His voice was professionally neutral as he read, "To Elena Maria Russo, daughter of Antonio and Isabella Russo, I bequeath the sum of $2 million to be held in trust until her 25th birthday. Additionally, I grant her 15% ownership in all legitimate Moretti business holdings, including real estate, restaurants, and investment portfolios. This bequest is made in recognition of the debt I owe to her family, a debt that can never truly be repaid." The words didn't make sense. Elena heard them, but they seemed to arrive from a great distance, as if spoken in a foreign language her brain couldn't quite translate. "I don't understand," she whispered. Dante pushed off from the desk and began pacing, his controlled exterior cracking to reveal barely contained fury. "That makes two of us. So let me ask you again, Elena, and I want the absolute truth. What was your relationship with my father?" "I didn't have one." The words burst out of her, edged with panic. "I saw him maybe twice, just in passing. We never spoke. I don't understand why." "Your parents." Dante stopped pacing and faced her directly. "Antonio and Isabella Russo. They worked for my father, didn't they?" Elena's mind raced backward through fragmented childhood memories. I think so. My father was a driver for someone important when I was very young, but then he and my mother opened their bakery. I was only 5 or 6 when that happened. I barely remember anything before the bakery." "What did they tell you about their previous work?" "Nothing. They never talked about it." Elena's hands were trembling now. "Please, I don't understand what's happening. Why would your father leave me anything?" Dante exchanged a long look with Castellano. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Then Dante moved to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a manila folder. He dropped it on the desk in front of Elena. "Open it," he commanded. With shaking hands, Elena opened the folder. Inside were photographs, old ones from at least 20 years ago. She recognized her parents immediately, though they were so young it made her chest ache. Her father in a driver's uniform, standing beside a black car. Her mother in the background of several photos, always near a small bakery storefront. But it was the other people in the photos that made Elena's breath catch. Giovanni Moretti, younger but unmistakable, and beside him, a boy of about 12 with dark hair and serious eyes. "Dante, this is from before I was born," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. 24 years ago, Dante confirmed. "Your father was my father's personal driver. Your mother helped with the family's legitimate businesses. The bakery was actually a front for cleaning money, though I doubt you knew that." Elena felt sick. Her parents, her kind, loving parents, had been involved in this world. "There was an incident," Dante continued, his voice taking on a harder edge. "A rival family made a move against my father, an ambush outside one of his restaurants. Your father was driving that night." He pulled another photograph from the folder. This one showed the aftermath of violence. A black car with shattered windows, bullet holes peppering the metal. Elena's stomach lurched. "Your father saved my father's life," Dante said flatly. "Took 3 bullets that were meant for him. Spent 2 months in the hospital recovering. After that, my father moved your family out of the business, set them up with the bakery, made sure they were protected, wanted them to have a clean life." Tears were streaming down Elena's face now as she stared at the photographs of her parents, these people she thought she knew, whose entire past had been hidden from her. "The debt was paid," Elena said, her voice breaking. They saved his life. He gave them a new life. Why would he? Because your parents were killed, Dante interrupted, and the words hit Elena like a physical blow. It was an accident. The police said the police were wrong, or they were paid to be wrong. Dante's expression was stone. Your parents' car didn't crash because of bad weather. The brake lines were cut. It was a hit, Elena. Professional. Clean. The room tilted. Elena gripped the arms of her chair, trying to anchor herself to reality. Who? Why would anyone? That's what we're trying to figure out. My father knew, or suspected. That's why he protected you after their deaths. The debt collectors who came after you. They weren't real collection agencies. They were enforcers from a rival family, trying to use you as leverage or eliminate loose ends. My father was secretly paying off your debts, but he died before he could finish the job. Elena couldn't process it all. Everything she thought she knew about her parents' death, about her own situation, was built on lies. The people who killed them, she managed to ask, are they still out there? Yes. Dante's single word carried the weight of a death sentence. And now? Elena looked up at him, seeing him clearly for the first time, not as her employer, but as someone caught in the same deadly web. What happens to me now? Now, Dante said, moving to stand directly in front of her. You're worth $2 million and 15% of legitimate holdings worth another $8 million. You've just become a very valuable target. The implications crashed over Elena like a wave. As a servant, she'd been beneath notice. But as an heiress to the Moretti fortune, they'll come for me, she whispered. Yes, and not just the people who killed your parents. My family isn't united, Elena. There are factions, rivalries, people who'll see you as a threat or an opportunity. Your brother. Elena remembered Rosa's whispered conversations about Marco Moretti, Dante's younger brother. Ambitious and ruthless. Dante's jaw tightened. Among others. So what do I do? You survive. Dante returned to his desk, pulling out papers. As of right now, you're moving out of the servants' quarters. Vincent is assigning you a protection detail. You don't go anywhere without security. You don't trust anyone except the people I explicitly tell you to trust. I'm a prisoner again, Elena said hollow. You're alive, Dante corrected. Let's keep it that way. Castellano cleared his throat. There are documents to sign, Miss Russo. The inheritance isn't immediate. You won't receive the full amount until you're 25, 3 years from now. But we need to establish the trust and transfer the business shares legally. Elena looked at the papers he was arranging on the desk. 3 years ago, $2 million would have seemed like an impossible dream. Now it felt like a curse. What if I don't want it? She asked. What if I just walk away? You can't. Dante's voice was final. My father's will is public record now among the family. Everyone knows. Walking away doesn't change that. You're in this whether you want to be or not. He was right. She knew he was right. There was no going back to invisibility. Okay, Elena said, straightening her spine. Tell me what I need to do. For the first time, something that might have been respect flickered across Dante's face. Sign the papers. Move your things to the East Wing. Do exactly what Vincent tells you. And Elena, he waited until she met his eyes. Don't trust anyone. Not the other staff. Not family members who seem friendly. Not anyone. In this world, trust gets you killed. She signed the documents with a hand that had stopped shaking. If she was going to survive this, she needed to be stronger than she'd ever been before. As Castellano gathered the papers and left, Vincent entered the office. Sir, we have a situation. Marco is here. He's demanding to see you. Dante's expression hardened. How much does he know? Everything. Someone leaked it. Of course they did. Dante looked at Elena. Vincent, take her to her new room. Stay with her. I'll handle Marco. As Vincent led Elena from the office, she heard Dante pick up his phone and say, we have a problem. Containment is compromised. Walking through the mansion now felt different. Elena wasn't invisible anymore. She was a target. And somewhere in this house or beyond its walls, people were already planning how to use her or eliminate her. The question was, who would make the first move? Elena woke to unfamiliar luxury, and for a disorienting moment she couldn't remember where she was. Silk sheets slid against her skin as she sat up, and early morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows draped in heavy curtains. The room was at least 5 times the size of her attic quarters. A 4-poster bed, antique furniture, a private bathroom with marble fixtures, and a sitting area with plush armchairs. It had been 3 days since the reading of Giovanni Moretti's will. 3 days since her entire world had been turned upside down. She climbed out of bed and padded barefoot across the thick carpet to the window. Below, the estate grounds stretched out in the autumn morning, the grass still glistening with dew. 2 armed guards patrolled the perimeter fence. A black SUV was parked near the main entrance. Vincent's vehicle, she'd learned, her constant shadow. Elena caught her reflection in the full-length mirror beside the window. She looked the same. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, same thin frame. But everything had changed. She was no longer Elena Russo, the invisible servant. She was Elena Russo, heiress to millions, a piece on a chessboard she didn't understand. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Russo, a woman's voice unfamiliar. May I come in? Elena pulled on the robe that had been left for her. Silk, expensive, nothing like the threadbare clothes she was used to. Yes. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 30s, professionally dressed, carrying a tray with breakfast. She wasn't one of the regular household staff. Good morning. I'm Claire, your personal assistant. Mr. Moretti assigned me to help you adjust. She set the tray on a small table near the sitting area. I've prepared breakfast, scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, toast, and coffee. Is there anything else you'd prefer? Personal assistant. The words felt absurd. No, This is fine. Thank you. Claire smiled warmly, but Elena noticed how her eyes quickly scanned the room, taking in every detail. Everyone in this house was always watching, always assessing. Mr. Moretti would like to see you at 10 o'clock in his office. I've laid out some clothes for you in the wardrobe. We had to estimate your size, but a proper stylist will be coming tomorrow to take measurements. A stylist? Elena felt overwhelmed. That's not necessary. Mr. Moretti insists you'll be attending family functions now, and appearance matters in this world. Claire moved to the wardrobe and pulled out an elegant dress. Navy blue, simple, but clearly expensive. This should work for this morning's meeting. After Claire left, Elena picked at the breakfast. The food was delicious, but it sat heavy in her stomach. She kept thinking about the kitchen where she used to eat with Rosa and Catherine. Simple meals on chipped plates. That had been real. This felt like a dream she couldn't wake from. She dressed in the navy dress and was surprised by how well it fit, how the fabric felt against her skin. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like she belonged in this world, but inside she felt like an imposter. Vincent was waiting in the hallway when she emerged. He gave her outfit a brief, approving nod. Ready? He asked. Do I have a choice? Something that might have been amusement flickered across his stern face. Not really, but I appreciate you asking. They walked through the mansion together, and Elena felt the weight of every glance from the staff they passed. Maria stood in the dining room doorway, her expression unreadable. Rosa quickly looked away when Elena tried to make eye contact. Even the guards seemed to watch her differently now. They're afraid of you, Vincent said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. That's ridiculous. I'm the same person I was a week ago. No, you're not. You have power now. Money. Position. That makes you dangerous. He paused outside Dante's office. In this world, Miss Russo, people fear power more than they fear violence. At least with violence, you know where you stand. He knocked twice and opened the door without waiting for a response. Dante's office looked different in the morning light, less intimidating, though the man behind the desk remained as imposing as ever. He was on the phone when they entered, speaking in rapid Italian. He gestured for Elena to sit while he finished the conversation. No, Marco, this isn't up for discussion, he said, his voice hard. Father's will is final. We'll talk about it at the family meeting tomorrow. He hung up without saying goodbye and turned his attention to Elena. How are you adjusting? He asked. I don't know. It's strange. Everything feels wrong. Wrong how? Elena struggled to articulate it. The staff won't talk to me anymore. Maria won't even look at me. Rosa and Catherine act like I'm a stranger. I know I'm not a servant anymore, but I don't know what I am. Your family, Dante said simply. That's what my father's will made you, whether you feel ready for it or not. I don't feel like family. I feel like an outsider pretending to belong. Dante leaned back in his chair, studying her with those penetrating dark eyes. That feeling doesn't go away. I was born into this world, raised to lead it, and there are still days I feel like an imposter. The difference is I learned to use that feeling. It keeps you sharp, aware, alive. Is that supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be honest. He stood and moved to the window, his back to her. There's a family meeting tomorrow night. You'll need to attend. Elena's stomach dropped. What? No, I can't. You have to. You're a beneficiary of my father's will. You own 15% of our legitimate businesses. That gives you a seat at the table whether you want it or not. What am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do? Dante turned to face her. You listen. You observe. You stay quiet unless directly addressed. And you remember that everyone in that room will be measuring you, looking for weakness, trying to figure out how to use you or eliminate you. The bluntness of his words sent a chill through her. Your own family? Especially my family. He moved closer, his expression serious. You need to understand how this works, Elena. My father built an empire over 40 years. When he died, he left behind power, territory, and money that everyone wants a piece of. My brother Marco believes he deserves more than he was given. My uncle Salvatore thinks the old ways should continue. My cousin Angela wants to legitimize everything and leave the old business behind. And you? I want to honor my father's wishes while keeping everyone alive. But I'm only one person, and there are factions within factions, alliances that shift like sand. He paused. You're a complication they didn't anticipate. New money, new influence, unknown loyalties. That makes you both valuable and dangerous. I don't want to be part of your power struggles. Then you should have been born into a different family. His tone wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. But you weren't. Your father saved my father's life, and that created a bond that doesn't break just because it's inconvenient. Elena stood, pacing to the window. Outside, she could see the autumn leaves falling from the oak trees that lined the driveway. Everything looked so peaceful, so normal, but she knew now that was an illusion. Tell me about my parents, she said quietly. The truth, all of it. Dante was silent for a long moment. Then he moved to his desk and pulled out a thick folder, different from the one he'd shown her during the will reading. Your father, Antonio Russo, started working for my family when he was 19. He was smart, loyal, and brave. By the time he was 25, he was my father's personal driver and most trusted bodyguard. Dante opened the folder, revealing more photographs. This is from the night of the ambush. Elena looked at the image. Her father, younger than she'd ever known him, standing beside a hospital bed. His arm was in a sling, bandages visible under his shirt, but he was smiling. A genuine, warm smile. 3 bullets, Dante continued. 1 in his shoulder, one in his side, one that grazed his head. The doctor said it was a miracle he survived. My father was unharmed because Antonio threw himself between my father and the shooters. Who were they? The shooters? The Calabrese family. Old rivals from Boston who wanted to expand into New York. They saw my father as the main obstacle. Dante's jaw tightened. We dealt with them, but the incident changed my father. He realized that loyalty like your father's was rare, and he didn't want to waste it. So he moved your parents out, set them up with the bakery, made sure they could have a normal life. And my mother, Isabella, was brilliant with numbers. She helped restructure several of our legitimate businesses, made them actually profitable instead of just fronts. My father respected her greatly. Dante showed her another photo. Her mother, young and beautiful, in an office surrounded by ledgers and documents. She was the one who suggested they leave. She wanted a family, wanted children who wouldn't grow up in this world. Tears pricked Elena's eyes. They wanted me to be safe. Yes, and for 22 years you were. Dante closed the folder. But then they died, and everything they'd built to protect you came crashing down. You really believe they were targeted? It wasn't just an accident. I know they were. My father had the car examined by his own people, independent of the police investigation. The brake lines were professionally cut. The timing was too perfect. They died just before they were going to pay off the last of the bakery's loans. Someone wanted them gone, and they wanted you vulnerable. But why? After all those years, that's what we're still trying to figure out. My father had theories, but he died before he could confirm them. Dante's expression darkened. Which is why you're in danger now. Someone out there has unfinished business with your family, and you're the last remaining Russo. A knock on the door interrupted them. Vincent entered without waiting for permission. Sir, we have a situation. There's been a breach of the south perimeter. 2 men tried to scale the fence. Security has them contained. Dante's entire demeanor changed in an instant, transforming from thoughtful to dangerous. Identified? Not yet, but they were asking about the girl. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Dante looked at Elena, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Genuine concern. Take her to the safe room, he ordered Vincent. Now, what's happening? Elena asked, fear rising in her throat. Someone's making a move. Dante was already pulling a weapon from his desk drawer, checking it with practiced efficiency. Vincent, go. I'll handle the interrogation. Vincent grabbed Elena's arm, not roughly, but with undeniable urgency. Come with me. Don't ask questions. Just move. They rushed through the mansion's corridors, Vincent's hand on her elbow, guiding her through turns and down a flight of stairs she'd never seen before. Behind them, Elena could hear voices shouting, the sound of running feet. What's a safe room? She asked, breathless. Exactly what it sounds like. Reinforced walls, separate ventilation system, communication equipment. If someone attacks the house, that's where high-value targets go. I'm a high-value target? Vincent shot her a look. You're worth $10 million and you're connected to this family. What do you think? They reached a door at the end of a basement corridor. Vincent pressed his palm against a scanner, and the heavy door swung open with a mechanical hiss. Inside was a room about 20 feet square, with monitors showing security camera feeds from around the estate, comfortable furniture, and supplies stacked along one wall. Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone except me or Mr. Moretti. Understood? Elena nodded, her heart racing. There's a panic button on that console if you need it, but you won't need it. This room is impenetrable. Vincent's expression softened slightly. You're safe here, Miss Russo, I promise. Then he was gone, the door sealing behind him with a solid thunk that made Elena feel both protected and trapped. She moved to the monitors, watching the security feeds with growing anxiety. On one screen, she could see Dante striding across the grounds toward the south fence, flanked by armed men. On another, 2 figures were on their knees in the grass, hands behind their heads, surrounded by guards. The interrogation happened off camera, but Elena could imagine it. Dante Moretti didn't seem like a man who asked questions gently. She sat in the safe room for what felt like hours but was probably only 45 minutes. Her mind raced with questions, fears, possibilities. Someone had come for her. The threat wasn't theoretical anymore. It was real, immediate, terrifying. Finally, the door opened. Dante entered, and Elena noticed blood on his knuckles. He saw her looking and wiped his hands with a handkerchief. Are you all right? He asked. Am I all right? You're the one with blood on your hands. It's not mine. He moved to the monitors and pulled up a recording. The men who tried to breach the perimeter were hired muscle, low-level, disposable, but they talked. Who sent them? Dante's expression was grim. The Calabrese family, the same people who killed your parents. Elena felt the room tilt. They're still after me? After all these years? It seems your family's debt to them goes deeper than we knew. Your father didn't just save my father that night. He also killed 2 Calabrese soldiers in the process. In their world, that's a blood debt that doesn't expire. So what happens now? Now we go to war. Dante's voice was cold, final. They made their move. They threatened what's under my protection. That can't stand. Elena stood, anger replacing fear. I'm not some prize to fight over. I'm not a piece of property. No, you're family, and in this world that means something. Dante stepped closer, his intense gaze locked on hers. Like it or not, Elena, you're in this now. The only choice you have is whether you learn to survive it or become another casualty. Then teach me, Elena said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "Stop treating me like I'm fragile. Stop hiding me in safe rooms. If people are coming for me, I want to be able to fight back." For the first time since she'd met him, Dante Moretti smiled, a real smile, not the cold, controlled expressions she was used to. "Finally," he said, "that's the fire I was waiting for." He extended his hand. Elena looked at it, understanding that this was more than just a gesture. This was acceptance, alliance, a commitment to survival. She took his hand, and his grip was firm, warm, surprisingly reassuring. "Tomorrow morning," Dante said. 6 a.m., the basement gym. "We start your training." "Training for what?" "For staying alive in a world that wants you dead." 6 a.m. came too early, but Elena was already awake when her alarm sounded. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the events of the previous day. The breach, the safe room, Dante's bloodied knuckles, and most of all, her own decision to stop being a victim. She dressed in the workout clothes Claire had left for her, black leggings and a fitted tank top, and made her way down to the basement gym. The mansion was still quiet at this hour, the household staff just beginning their morning routines. The gym was larger than she'd expected, equipped with state-of-the-art machines, free weights, and a matted area that looked designed for combat training. Dante was already there, dressed in athletic gear, wrapping his hands with tape. "You're early," he said, not looking up. "I couldn't sleep." "Good. Fear keeps you alert. Comfort makes you careless." He finished wrapping his hands and gestured to the mats. "Let's see what we're working with." "Come at me." Elena blinked. "What?" "Attack me. However you think you'd defend yourself if someone grabbed you." She approached hesitantly, then threw a clumsy punch toward his shoulder. Dante caught her wrist effortlessly, twisted, and suddenly Elena was on the mat, his knee pressing lightly against her back. "That took 2 seconds, he said, releasing her and stepping back. "In a real situation, you'd be dead or worse." Again, they repeated the exercise over and over. Each time, Elena tried different approaches, kicking, grabbing, trying to use surprise, and each time, Dante subdued her within seconds. It was humiliating and exhausting, but she refused to quit. After the 15th attempt, Dante called a break. Elena sat on the mat, breathing hard, sweat dampening her hair. "You're thinking too much," he said, tossing her a water bottle. "Self-defense isn't about technique at first. It's about instinct. When someone attacks you, your body freezes because your brain is trying to process. We need to train that out of you." "How?" "Repetition, muscle memory, making violence so familiar that your body reacts before your mind catches up." He pulled her to her feet. "Again, but this time don't think, just move." The training continued for 2 hours. By the end, Elena was drenched in sweat, her muscles screaming, but she'd managed to land one solid strike, a knee to Dante's midsection that actually made him grunt. "Better," he said, and the single word of approval felt like a victory. Over the next 3 weeks, the training became Elena's new routine. Every morning at 6, she met Dante in the gym. He taught her how to break holds, where to strike for maximum impact, how to use an attacker's momentum against them. He was a demanding teacher, never gentle but never cruel. When she made progress, he acknowledged it. When she failed, he made her try again. But the training wasn't just physical. In the afternoons, Vincent took over, teaching her about situational awareness, how to spot threats, how to read a room and identify exits. He showed her how to handle a firearm, starting with basic safety and gradually building to accuracy training. "I never thought I'd be learning to shoot," Elena said one afternoon at the range in the estate's underground facility. "Hopefully you'll never need to," Vincent replied, watching as she loaded the magazine with steady hands. "But hope isn't a strategy. Preparation is." The weapon felt heavy and foreign in her hands at first, but like everything else, repetition made it familiar. By the end of the 2nd week, she could hit the center target consistently. By the 3rd week, Vincent had her practicing under pressure, sudden noises, dim lighting, timed drills that forced her to react quickly. Through it all, Elena felt herself changing. Her body grew stronger, her reflexes sharper, but more than that, her mind shifted. The frightened girl who'd hidden in the safe room was being replaced by someone harder, someone more dangerous. The staff noticed the change too. Maria started treating her with cautious respect. The guards nodded when she passed. Even Claire, her assistant, seemed more genuine in their interactions, but there was one relationship that remained complicated: her connection with Dante himself. They spent hours together each morning, their training sessions creating an intimacy that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with trust. Dante saw her at her weakest, exhausted, frustrated, sometimes near tears, and never judged her for it. In return, Elena saw glimpses of the man beneath the cold exterior, the way he'd adjust her stance with unexpected gentleness, the rare smile when she executed a technique perfectly, the moment he'd caught her when she'd lost her balance, his hand steady on her waist, his eyes meeting hers with something that wasn't quite professional. Neither of them acknowledged these moments. They were too dangerous, too complicated. Elena was under his protection, and Dante was her teacher, her guardian, the head of a family she was only beginning to understand. But the tension was there, unspoken and growing. 3 weeks after the breach, Dante announced it was time for Elena to attend her first family meeting. "You've been training," he said, as they finished their morning session. "But this is a different kind of combat. Words instead of fists, but just as dangerous." That evening, Elena dressed in a black designer dress that Claire had selected. Elegant, conservative, appropriate for a business meeting. She studied herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Gone was the frightened servant. In her place stood someone who looked like she belonged in this world. Vincent escorted her to Dante's office, where the meeting would be held. As they walked, he offered final advice. Remember what we practiced. Stay alert, watch everyone. Don't react emotionally to provocations, that's what they'll try to get from you. And if things get tense, stay near me or Mr. Moretti. The office had been arranged for the meeting, with additional chairs forming a circle. Elena entered to find several people already present. She recognized Marco immediately. Dante's younger brother had his same dark coloring but with sharper features, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. An older man with silver hair sat near the window. Salvatore Moretti, Dante's uncle, she assumed. A striking woman in her 40s occupied another chair, reviewing documents with focused intensity. Dante stood near his desk, and when Elena entered, all conversations stopped. Every eye turned to assess her. Everyone, Dante said, his voice carrying authority. This is Elena Russo. As you know, she's a beneficiary of my father's will, and now holds a stake in our legitimate businesses. Marco was the first to speak. The maid. His tone made the word sound like an insult. The daughter of Antonio Russo, Dante corrected sharply, who saved our father's life. Show respect, Marco. Respect? Marco stood, approaching Elena with calculated steps. For someone who appeared out of nowhere, who we know nothing about. Forgive me if I'm skeptical about her sudden good fortune. Elena felt her pulse quicken, but she remembered Dante's training. Don't react. Stay calm. Show strength. I didn't ask for this, she said, her voice steady. I didn't even know your father, but he chose to honor a debt to my family, and I intend to honor his wishes in return. How noble, Marco said with mock admiration. Tell me, Elena, what do you know about running businesses? About managing investments? About the complexities of family operations? Nothing, Elena admitted, but I'm learning. The woman with the documents looked up, interest flickering in her eyes. At least she's honest. That's more than I can say for some people in this room. She stood and extended her hand. Angela Moretti, I handle our legal operations. Elena shook her hand, grateful for the gesture. It's nice to meet you. Salvatore cleared his throat, his voice gruff. The girl has a right to be here. Giovanni's will was clear, whether we like it or not. That's the end of the discussion. Is it? Marco challenged. Father's will was written years ago. He couldn't have known how things would develop. We need to think practically about what's best for the family. What you mean, Dante said coldly, is what's best for you. This isn't about practicality, Marco. It's about you wanting a larger share. The tension in the room escalated. Marco's pleasant facade cracked, revealing the ambition beneath. Everything you have because you were born first, Marco said, his voice low and dangerous. I've worked just as hard, sacrificed just as much, but you get the empire while I get scraps. And now some girl who cleaned our floors gets millions. Careful, Dante warned. Or what, you'll cut me out too? Marco laughed bitterly. Face it, brother. Father's will created more problems than it solved. Elena's inheritance destabilizes everything. The families we do business with see it as weakness, as sentimentality clouding judgment. Angela intervened. The families see it as Giovanni honoring his debts. That actually strengthens our reputation. It shows we take care of our own. She's not our own. Marco's control finally shattered. She's an outsider with a convenient connection to a dead man who can't defend his decisions. That's enough. Dante's voice cut through the argument like a blade. Elena is family because my father said she is. That's final. If you can't accept that, Marco, there are other territories you can manage. Far from here. The threat was clear. Marco's jaw clenched, his hands forming fists at his sides. For a moment, Elena thought he might actually attack his brother, but then his expression smoothed, becoming unreadable. Of course, Marco said, his tone suddenly pleasant again. You're right. I apologize for my reaction. It's been a stressful time for all of us. He turned to Elena with a smile that made her skin crawl. Welcome to the family, Elena. I'm sure you'll be a valuable addition. The meeting continued, but Elena barely processed the discussion of business operations and financial reports. She was too aware of Marco's eyes on her, calculating and cold. Vincent had warned her about provocations, but this felt like something deeper, genuine malice wrapped in false courtesy. When the meeting finally ended, the family members dispersed quickly. Salvatore offered Elena a gruff nod of acknowledgement. Angela lingered to exchange a few words with Dante, then approached Elena. A word of advice, she said quietly. Marco is dangerous when he feels threatened. Watch your back. I will. Thank you. After everyone left, Elena found herself alone with Dante. The tension drained from his shoulders, revealing the exhaustion beneath his controlled exterior. You did well, he said. Better than I expected for your first family meeting. Marco hates me. Marco hates anyone he perceives as an obstacle to power. It's not personal. It's just who he is. Dante poured himself a drink from the bar cart. But Angela's right. He's dangerous. More dangerous than the Calabrese family, because he knows our weaknesses. What do we do about him? We watch him, we prepare, and we stay one step ahead. Dante downed the drink in one swallow. The inheritance signing is in 2 days. It's a formality, but it makes everything official. After that, you're legally entitled to your share, and there's nothing Marco or anyone else can do about it. That's when he'll make his move, Elena said with sudden certainty. Isn't it? Before the signing becomes official. Dante met her eyes, and she saw confirmation in his gaze. Probably, which is why we'll be ready. The next 48 hours passed in careful preparation. Vincent increased security around Elena, adding 2 more bodyguards to her detail. Dante brought in a team he trusted to sweep the lawyer's office where the signing would take place, checking for any threats or security vulnerabilities. Elena continued her training with renewed intensity, pushing herself harder than ever. The danger wasn't abstract anymore. It had a face, a name, a voice that dripped false charm while planning her destruction. The morning of the signing, Elena woke before dawn. She dressed in a navy suit that Angela had helped her select. Professional, authoritative, armor made of fabric. When she looked in the mirror, she saw someone ready to fight. The signing was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Richard Castellanos' law office in downtown Manhattan. The drive took 45 minutes. Elena sitting in the back of an armored SUV with Vincent beside her, and 2 additional vehicles in their convoy. Remember the plan? Vincent said, as they navigated through city traffic. We enter through the main entrance. You stay between me and Dante at all times. We've secured the building, but stay alert anyway. They arrived at the modern high-rise that housed Castellanos' firm. The lobby was sleek and professional, all glass and steel. Security guards that Vincent had personally vetted stood at strategic points. Everything seemed in order. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor felt eternal. Elena's heart pounded, but her hands were steady. Whatever happened today, she was ready. Castellanos' office was a corner suite with panoramic views of Manhattan. The lawyer greeted them with professional warmth, showing them into a conference room where documents were already arranged on the table. Mr. Marco Moretti is already here, Castellanos said, as are the witnesses we'll need for the signing. Elena and Dante entered the conference room, and she immediately sensed something wrong. Marco stood near the windows, but his usual smirk was replaced by an expression of cold calculation. 2 men in suits flanked him, not family members, not lawyers. Their posture screamed security. Enforcers, maybe worse. Vincent's hand moved subtly toward his weapon, but Marco raised a hand. No need for dramatics, Marco said smoothly. I just wanted to have my own witnesses present. It's an important occasion. After all, your witnesses weren't approved, Vincent said flatly. They're here now. What are you going to do, start a firefight in a lawyer's office? Marco's smile returned. Let's all be civilized about this. Dante assessed the situation quickly. Fine, let's get this done. They moved to the conference table, but Elena noticed how Vincent positioned himself to keep both her and Dante protected from Marco's men. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Castellano began the formal proceedings, reading from documents in a tone that tried to inject normalcy into a situation that felt anything but normal. Elena signed where indicated, her signature surprisingly steady. Each document represented money, property, power, things she'd never imagined having. Now, if everyone could raise your glasses, Marco said, producing a bottle of champagne and glasses as if he'd planned this moment. A toast to honor our father's wishes and welcome Elena to the family. Dante's eyes narrowed. We don't need a toast, Marco. Come now, brother. Where's your sense of tradition? Marco poured champagne into glasses, handing them around the room. To family, to legacy, to the choices we make. Elena reached for a glass, but Vincent's hand stopped her, his grip tight enough to be a warning. Something was wrong. That's when everything happened at once. The conference room door burst open, not with Marco's men forcing entry. They were already inside. No, these were new arrivals. FBI agents, weapons drawn, flooding into the room. Nobody move! Federal agents! Chaos erupted. Marco's men reached for weapons, but Vincent was faster, his gun already drawn and aimed. Dante pushed Elena behind him, shielding her with his body. Castellano dropped to the floor, hands over his head. Everyone on the ground. Now! Wait! Angela's voice cut through the confusion. She stood in the doorway, flanked by more agents. Special Agent Angela Moretti, FBI. Marco Moretti, you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted coercion, and obstruction of justice. Elena's mind reeled. Angela wasn't just family. She was FBI. Marco's expression transformed from shock to fury. You set me up. You all set me up. You set yourself up, Dante said coldly. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you trying to manipulate the signing? The champagne was going to be your move, wasn't it? Drug Elena, claim she was unfit, contest the inheritance. Marco lunged toward Elena, his control finally shattering completely. You don't deserve any of this. You're nothing. A servant who... Vincent intercepted him, taking Marco down with brutal efficiency. Within seconds, FBI agents had Marco in handcuffs, reading him his rights. There's more, Angela said, approaching Dante. We've been building a case for months. Marco's been involved in activities that violate the family's legitimate business restrictions. Extortion, illegal loans, intimidation. He's also been working with the Calabresi family. The Calabresi? Elena felt ice in her veins. The ones who killed my parents? Angela nodded grimly. Marco approached them years ago, gave them information in exchange for help building his own power base. He's the one who told them about your parents, about what they knew. He ordered the hit. The revelation hit Elena like a physical blow. Marco, Dante's own brother, had murdered her parents, had created the chain of events that led to her servitude, her suffering, everything. Dante's face had gone white with fury. You killed them? You killed the Russos? They were loose ends. Marco shouted, being dragged toward the door by agents. They knew too much. They were living proof of father's weakness. I was protecting the family. You destroyed it, Dante said, his voice deadly quiet. Get him out of my sight before I finish what the law won't. As Marco was removed from the building, the conference room slowly returned to order. Elena sat in one of the chairs, her legs no longer able to support her. Vincent stood nearby, his weapon finally holstered but his eyes still scanning for threats. Angela approached Elena, her professional mask slipping to show genuine sympathy. I'm sorry you had to learn about it this way. We needed Marco to make a move, to have evidence that would hold up in court. He's been untouchable for too long. You used me as bait, Elena said, not accusingly, just stating fact. We used the signing as leverage, but you were never in real danger. We had agents covering every angle. Angela glanced at Dante. Your brother made sure of that. Elena looked at Dante, seeing the tension in every line of his body. You knew Angela was FBI. I've known for 5 years. She's been trying to clean up the family from the inside. Dante moved to the window, staring out at the city. But I didn't know about Marco's involvement with your parents until 2 days ago. Angela brought me evidence, and we set up this operation to catch him. Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to react genuinely. If Marco suspected a trap, he might have run. We needed him confident, comfortable, willing to make his move. Dante turned to face her. I'm sorry, Elena, for what he did to your family, for not protecting them when it mattered. Elena stood on shaking legs and moved to where Dante stood. The man who'd trained her, protected her, taught her to survive. The man who'd just orchestrated his own brother's arrest to give her justice. It's over, she said quietly. Really over? Marco will spend the rest of his life in prison. The Calabrese family is being dismantled by federal task forces as we speak. The people who hurt your family are paying for what they did. Dante's voice softened. You're safe now, Elena. Truly safe. The relief should have overwhelmed her, but instead Elena felt strangely hollow. She'd spent 3 years defined by her parents' death, 18 months in servitude, and the last month preparing for war. Now that the battle was won, she didn't know who she was supposed to be. What happens now? She asked. Now? Dante almost smiled. Now you get to decide. The inheritance is yours. You're free to go, to start over anywhere you want. No more danger, no more threats, no more obligations. Freedom. Real freedom. It's what she'd dreamed of for so long. So why did the thought of leaving feel wrong? 3 months later, Elena stood in the office that had once belonged to Dante's father, looking out at the estate grounds covered in fresh snow. The room was hers now, part of her inheritance, part of her new life. She'd made her choice. After Marco's arrest and the dismantling of the threats against her, Elena could have walked away, could have taken her money, moved across the country, started fresh where no one knew her story. Vincent had even helped her research apartments in California, fresh starts in new cities, but something had kept her here. Maybe it was unfinished business. Maybe it was the businesses she now partially owned and wanted to help rebuild legitimately. Maybe it was the strange sense of family she'd found in this dangerous world. Or maybe it was the man who appeared in her doorway now, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Thought you could use this, Dante said, offering her one of the cups. Thanks. Elena accepted it, their fingers brushing in a way that still sent electricity through her despite 3 months of increasing closeness. They'd found a rhythm since Marco's arrest. Elena had thrown herself into learning the legitimate businesses, the restaurants, the real estate holdings, the investment portfolios. Dante had been patient, teaching her the intricacies of business operations with the same intensity he'd brought to her physical training. But something had shifted between them. The protective distance Dante had maintained had slowly eroded. Now they worked together as partners, their meetings extending late into the evening, their conversations moving beyond business to personal territory. He'd told her about the burden of leadership, the isolation of his position. She'd shared her dreams for the future, her plans to honor her parents' memory through legitimate success. I have something for you, Dante said, setting down his coffee to pull a folder from his jacket. Elena opened it to find property deeds. What is this? Your parents' bakery. The building was sold after their death, but I tracked down the owner and bought it back. It's yours now, if you want it. Tears stung Elena's eyes. The bakery, her parents' dream, the place where she'd spent her childhood covered in flour, learning to bake beside her mother. Dante, I don't know what to say. Say you'll rebuild it. Make it what they wanted it to be. He stepped closer, his voice softer. You don't have to stay here, Elena. You don't owe me anything. But if you choose to stay, I want it to be because it's what you want, not because you feel obligated. Elena looked up at him, this man who'd been her employer, her protector, her teacher, and now something she couldn't quite name. Dangerous, yes. Complicated, definitely. But also honorable in his own way. Loyal, and surprisingly kind, beneath the hard exterior. I want to stay, she said, not because I'm afraid to leave, not because I owe you, but because I choose to. This is my family now, strange as that sounds. These businesses, this legacy, I want to be part of building something good from it. And? Dante asked. And Elena heard the question beneath the question. And because I want to see where this goes. She gestured between them. Whatever this is. Dante smiled, a real smile, the kind she rarely saw. That's a terrible idea. I'm not an easy person to be around. Good thing I'm not easy either anymore. Elena set down her coffee and closed the distance between them. You taught me to fight, Dante. To survive. to be strong. But you also taught me that choosing to stay can be just as brave as choosing to leave. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. You're sure? I'm sure. He kissed her then, and it felt like coming home after a long journey. Not the end of her story, but a new beginning built on ashes and inheritance, blood and choice. Outside, snow continued to fall over the Moretti estate. Inside, Elena Russo, no longer a servant, no longer just a survivor, but a woman who'd claimed her place in a complicated world, stood in her own office beside a man who'd helped her become who she was meant to be. The invisible girl had found her voice, and she was never going to be silent again.